Hey there! I'm so glad you're here today. This video is extra special because I am teaming up with the very talented Melanie over at Mel's Stamping Gallery. We're both working with the same Stampin' Up collection gathered together to create our layouts. We haven't shared our ideas with each other, so I'm really excited to see what she creates. So let's dive in here. Let's have some fun. And when you're finished with me, pop over to Mel's channel and check out her layout. I'm sure it's going to be amazing. In front of me is this beautiful fall-inspired pattern paper. I've flipped the papers over so that you can see both sides of each sheet. So when I think of fall, football is one of the first things that comes to mind. Can you tell I'm a boy mom? I've got 7 photos I'm working with today from a football game we attended last fall. It was a beautiful day. Our team didn't win, but we had a great time and there were fireworks afterwards. These aren't your typical fall photos, no pumpkin patch or leaf raking here. I'm going to show you how this autumn-inspired paper can still work beautifully with pictures from a very fun football game. Right away, I knew I wanted to use the old olive striped paper. My husband and I are both wearing green. Our team colors are green and gold. And of course, the turf on the field is green too. Even though there aren't any fall leaves in the pictures, the trees around the stadium were in those gorgeous shades of autumn, so I'm bringing in the leaf pattern paper. Next, I'm thinking about a more neutral pattern. So there are a few in the soft beige color, this one and this one, and I do think that there's another one floating around here somewhere. Nathan's shirt is that same beige color, so it'll tie in nicely. So I like to test everything out first before I commit. So we'll decide together which one of the lighter patterns I'm going to use. For now, I'll grab some white cardstock and we'll get started. I've got a rough idea for photo placement. This 4x5 of Evan and his buddy Nathan are going to go on the right. Then on the left, I want a column of 3x4 landscape photos coming down the side. Another 3x4 portrait, and then a 4x5, and finally this 4x5 of my husband and me as the focal photo on the left. Now, I haven't figured out my journaling spot yet, but we'll see where it fits after. For the base papers, I'd like the green stripe paper to run along the bottom of the whole layout, kind of representing the field, I guess. The colorful leaf pattern will be like in a thin strip, maybe an inch wide on top of the green. Let me get that into place without making a huge mess. And I did manage to find that third beige paper. So right away, I can rule out the pattern that has the champagne leaves on it. Even though it is tone on tone, it is a little bit busy. And so that leaves me with these 2 softer prints. Both could work, but once I pop the picture of Evan and Nathan on top, I like the lighter, subtle tone-on-tone pattern the best. Perfect. That's going to fill in this area right here. At some point in time, I am going to back the column of the pictures with some cardstock, but other than that, the layout will be mirrored. The beige pattern piece for the right is 11.5 by 6, leaving a little white at the top and the outer edge. The green pattern is 4 by 12 for both sides. By the way, I did ink all the edges already with early espresso ink off camera. On the left, I left the beige piece at 6 by 12 for now. Once I know exactly what's happening with that column, I'll trim it down. The leaf pattern paper is 1.5 by 12 for both sides. Now I might dovetail the ends for some visual interest, and then I'll have more of that white peeking through, but we'll see how it progresses. Now the column situation. Looking at the pictures, there are two colors that stand out the most to me other than the green: black and yellow. Now I don't want to introduce black. Early Espresso is acting as like my dark anchor color already, so that leaves yellow. Now I am not a huge yellow fan, but crushed curry is one of the coordinating colors, and I think it's gonna work here. I'm using the solid core cardstock, and you know what? The photos look really good on it. Now, if I cut it down so the pictures just fit on it and sprinkle yellow elsewhere on the layout, I think it'll balance it. You know, if I don't like it, it's just paper. So let's just go for it. So I've trimmed the crushed curry to 11 by 4 for now. I will probably trim more off as we move through the process, but now I can figure out what size I want that beige DSP and cut that down. So let's see here. I'm going to go with 7.5 by 6. Before moving on, I cut a mat for the focal photo out of old olive cardstock. Then another one from Early Espresso. I have been really liking this triple matte look lately. It gives my focal photo more presence on the page, tying in more of the colors in the layout. I cut a mat for the picture of Evan and Nathan in the brown color too, to carry that over to the right. For the title, I'm using the party alphabet dies to spell falling. The full title will read Falling for Football. It's a little word play that combines fall and football. I couldn't resist. These dies are, a bit of an investment, but they have become such a staple in my craft room. Now, this space I have here for the title is a little bit tight, but if I slightly overlap the letters, I think I can make it work. Now that I've, got them all placed nicely, I'm going to pull them off and cut them out of white cardstock. Of course, remembering to cut the L twice. To give the plain letters a subtle fall touch, I'm embossing them all at once with the Gathering Leaves folder. Using Early Espresso ink, I'm lightly sponging over the top and edges of the embossed letters. This helps the leaf pattern pop and adds a variation in color, so each letter has a little character. I like that it doesn't look uniform. It keeps it feeling organic, like real leaves. And I'll finish inking the rest off camera. So here's a close-up of the finished look. But you can see how just a little ink really brings that texture to life. To help the letters pop even more, I cut a F and an A, one from Crumb Cake cardstock and the other from Cajun Craze, for a drop shadow. And I'm testing both. But right now, I can tell you, I've already decided the Cajun Craze definitely looks best. For the rest of the title, I used the mini alphabet dies to cut them out of Early Espresso cardstock. I really love the mix of the embossed large letters and the plain small letters. To me, this adds a lot of interest, and it keeps the title feeling kind of playful, and it gives it a little bit of layering. The only tricky part is my spelling skills and fumbly fingers. I'll quickly finish off the title by adding the extra letters in the Cajun Craze cardstock to create a drop shadow effect, offsetting them just enough so the color peeks out from the top and the left sides of each letter. You know, I've really grown to enjoy watching football over the years. Even though I still don't know all the rules, both my boys play the game, so I've learned to appreciate the sport. And we try to attend at least one stadium game per year. You know, it's always fun to soak in the atmosphere and enjoy the entertainment. For this game, though, our seats were on the opposing team side of the stadium. We did get a few looks when our team managed to score a touchdown, but lucky for us, it didn't happen very often. And now my full title is complete, Falling for Football. I'm going to dovetail the bottom of the crushed curry cardstock and the leaf pattern papers. There is a few ways to add a dovetail. On a larger piece like this, I tend to give the paper a light bend to find center, and then I snip up the crease. Maybe I'll extend that cut just a little bit more. Once I've got that cut in the middle, I just cut in from each corner to meet the top of the snip. Now, you don't have to fold it at all. You can measure to find the middle or eyeball if that's your way. You can even use a square punch, or there are dies that cut this and give you the same look. So moving on to the fun part, embellishing. I'm using the Gathering Moments bundle to stamp a few leaves and maybe some acorns. I have a foam mat. You don't need to use one, but I am using it because I'm working over my layout. These are cling stamps, and I've already got them mounted on my blocks. I pulled out Old Olive, Crumb Cake, Cajun Craze, and Crushed Curry ink for my leaf colors. Of course, Crumb Cake will be for the acorns. I'll practice on some scrap paper first and then stamp onto white cardstock. I keep a bin of white scraps just for this reason. Now, isn't that cute? Next, I'll use Cajun Craze for the bigger leaf. The stamp image is slightly shaded, so giving lighter and darker areas in the leaf, and the veining in the leaf stamps darker too. It's pretty amazing how much detail you get with just one stamp. So now that I've done a few of those, I'll switch over to crushed curry for the smaller leaf stamp. I love having a variety of sizes to work with. It gives so much flexibility within your clusters. I'll stamp a few more off camera, and then I'll use the coordinating dies to cut them all out. Though the shapes are simple enough to just fussy cut. I did buy this set for the large leaf dies. Let's be honest, they're real showstoppers. They're nice and big, about the size of my hand. So there are two ways you can use this die. I'm sure there's more, but for today, we're using two. You can either cut just the outline of the leaf, or what I'm going to do, we're going to nest the extra leaf die inside the larger one. This cuts holes into the leaf so that you can stitch the veins in. So now I have a great variety of leaves ready. But first, we're going to add some distressing before stitching the large leaves. I've cut a maple leaf out of Crumb Cake cardstock and a oak from Cajun Craze. First, I'll lightly spray a little water onto the leaf. Careful not to get my layout wet. Just a few small squirts. Then I'm going to crumple it up right into a little ball. The water softens the paper and makes it easier to crush. I'll carefully open it back up without ripping it, and I'll repeat the process on the oak leaf. So while the leaves are still damp, I'll use the matching ink and a sponge to lightly ink the edges and creases. This gives that leaf a weathered, worn look. Now keep in mind, once they are fully dry, the ink will appear much lighter. Here are the finished distressed leaves. I also cut another maple leaf out of the crushed curry cardstock without the holes. And I did add the same treatment, but this time I used early espresso ink to kind of tone down the brightness of the yellow. While the leaves dry, I'm going to figure out where to put my journaling. Using the nested essential dies, I cut the largest banner out of the crushed curry crushed curry cardstock. I'll tuck it in behind the photo over here and type my journaling on my laptop to print it directly onto the banner element. This die set is great to have in your craft room. It adds double stitching lines all the way around the shape. Now the leaves are dry and I can bring in the linen thread in the early espresso color. I'm using a large needle. I have had this for years. I think it came with an old Making Memories kit. It came with a hammer and an eyelet setter. Yeah, totally old school, right? I'm starting in the lower left area of the maple leaf. Coming up from the bottom of the leaf, I've left a nice long piece of thread and I'm going to pull it through until I reach the end. I'm just going to hold a little piece of it with my finger, but you're welcome to pop on a piece of tape onto the back to keep it from moving. Then I'm going down through the next hole over, pulling the thread all the way through again. That makes the first stitch. Now I'm coming up from the underside, but this time I'm skipping a hole. So when I go back down from the top side, I'm going through the hole behind it. So this creates what's called a back stitch. Probably the easiest stitch for this leaf design. Although I've seen Chelsey Vorsmarny on a video recently where she stitched beautiful leaves. And I will link her video down below. I'll keep working my way through the leaves using the same back stitch. Each time I come up from the underside, I will skip one hole and then go back down through the hole behind it from the top side. Keeping in mind the extra holes in between that add to the veining of the leaf. I'm keeping my tension snug, but not too tight so that the paper doesn't buckle. When I reach the end of the thread or the end of the veining, I'll flip it over to the back and you can either tape the thread down or I like to weave it through itself to tie a knot. And then I'll trim off the extra. If you're new to stitching on paper, this is a great stitch to start with. Once you get the rhythm, it's actually pretty relaxing. And I love the way the leaves turned out. The veins really give the leaf dimension and life. I'm thinking my main cluster is going to go in the upper right corner. I've got the yellow maple leaf and the Cajun Craze oak leaf. The second cluster is going to go in the upper left, tucked behind the focal photo. That's where the third large leaf in the crumb cake will sit. By placing the yellow leaf here, I'm balancing the yellow cardstock in the column. And with the yellow journaling spot in the lower corner, it repeats the color and creates a visual triangle and ties everything together. Felt like the leaves needed a point of origin. I went through my autumn theme stamp sets and found the Autumn to Remember set. The sentiment Crisp Autumn Days is just perfect. I stamped it on a circle of white cardstock with early espresso ink, and then I inked the edges with the same color. Now the leaves have a natural starting point, and I have added a fun little sentiment to the layout. Using the smaller leaves I stamped earlier, I'm filling in some of the open spots. I also die cut a few leaves from early Espresso with the Amber Autumn dies, and I'll tuck them in to build up both clusters, repeating the colors throughout to keep the layout feeling cohesive. And of course, a football game layout needs a little football themed ephemera. I hopped onto my Cricut membership in Design Space and found a couple of perfect pieces. I was able to size them exactly how I wanted and even customize the badge by switching the colors to Stampin' Up shades using the hex codes. So using the print then cut, you can print the image on your regular printer and then let the Cricut do the cutting. To bring in a touch more of the dark brown to the upper right cluster, I reached for the textured floral dies. Unfortunately, this is a retired set, but there is a large sprig die that reminds me of the foliage in the pattern paper. And I went ahead and I cut one from early Espresso and then another in Crumb cake. And then I'm adding a few more leaves and the cute acorn to the badge in the third cluster to finish that section off. For my journaling, I typed and printed it onto a clear sticker sheet. I want to note that I did leave this alone for a few minutes to let the ink fully dry. After trimming it down to match the size of the banner shape, I'll peel just a small section off the backing and line it up perfectly so it fits within the space of the banner. Once it's centered, I'll slowly remove the rest of the backing, pressing it as I go to avoid bubbles. Then I'll trim off any extra and tuck the one edge behind the photo. Off camera, I cut a stitched circle slightly bigger than the white circle from Crumb Cake cardstock. It just needed something else. And then I added another sprig in the dark brown to fill up that area. To ground the layout and give the title more presence, I cut 2 1/4-inch strips from the green striped paper. This time I'm using the B side. The pattern gives me this mud vibe, which I think works perfectly for a football layout. I really like the extra detail that it adds. I just need to make sure that it's straight. And I'm even debating maybe adding like a leaf or an acorn down by the title for a final touch. For the finishing details, I'm using the Cajun Craze and gold dots in all 3 sizes across my clusters for a little bit of sparkle. And that's my finished layout. I love how the fall colors, the gathering together papers, and those stitched leaves came together with my football photos. You know, this is a good reminder that you don't have to use theme paper to tell a themed story. With the right colors and elements, you can make it work beautifully. I did a quick last-minute addition. The cluster on the right felt a little unbalanced, so I used the Changing Leaves hybrid embossing folder and dies to cut a larger leaf from the lighter side of Old Olive two-tone cardstock. And I did a little ink blending to give it dimension and help it blend in with the rest of the leaves. That extra leaf fills in this space beautifully and finishes off the cluster. This set is retired now, but it was very popular and I'm sure a lot of you still have it in your crafty stash. I hope walking through my process gave you some new ideas for mixing and matching your own supplies. And if you enjoyed this video, I'd love it if you gave it a thumbs up and subscribed to my channel. I share new videos every week with the occasional Friday extra. And don't forget, pop over to Mel's Stamping Gallery to see her layout. I can't wait to see what she's created. I will link her video in the description box below so you can find it easily. And if you're in the mood for more fall themed layouts, check out this video right here. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. Keep telling your stories one page at a time, and I'll see you in the next video.